And now I would like to briefly introduce our two speakers, Brinda and Ajay, who have joined us. I think both of them are joining from Australia. Their full profiles are in the detailed agenda that was sent to you earlier. So I will just give brief introductions. So I start with Brinda, who some of you have heard before because she had joined us earlier in the week. Brinda is the co-founder and head of sustainability and consultant at Sustainext. She's a highly skilled sustainability consultant with expertise in ESG reporting and developing sustainability strategies. She holds an MSc in sustainability and social innovation from HEC Paris and has over 6 years of consulting experience at VNV Advisory, specializing in corporate ESG disclosure, governance, and sustainability performance. And our second presenter this morning is Ajay Korpal. Ajay is co-founder as well and head of sustainability and product design at Sustainext. Ajay is a sustainability consultant with an interdisciplinary background with technical skills from engineering and real-world problem-solving skills from design thinking. Ajay has a wide gamut of experience from working with ground-level NGOs in India to working with international think tanks. So we are very happy to have both of them join us here this morning as we conclude Governance Week 2023 with Day 5, a focus on groups and conglomerates. So Brinda and Ajay, I now hand over the floor to you.
Thank you so much, Kamala. And as a slight clarification, I think Ajay is joining us from India, and I'm joining in from Sydney. So we're both a little bit in the future. So we're bringing direct relays about sustainability today from the future. Ajay, would you like to share your screen and we'll get started?
Thank you, Brinda, and thank you, Kamla, for the kind words. And you tied it up really well. The need for this, we have, quite a lot of thoughts, to share with you. We'll just get started.
All right, welcome everyone. Today we're going to be talking about the theme that has been the focus for the entire governance week, governing for future generations. But we will be looking at it from the angle of how does this apply to conglomerates and what it actually looks like. What are the different considerations of governing for sustainability for future generations from the perspective of a conglomerate. Next slide, please. All right. So the intention for today's presentation is we want it to be interactive, we want it to be insightful, and we want it to be discussion led. So you will see a lot of questions that are aimed at you because we know this is a diverse, intelligent audience, and we would love to learn from you as well. And I think there is so much value in discussion. So we will be asking you questions. We'll be using this tool called Mentimeter, and we will take 2 minutes to set this up right now. So I will share a link in the chat, and if all of you can click on that and let me know if you have access to it.
Alternatively, you can also scan the QR code on your screen from your mobile phones or go to menti.com and use the code to join in.
Right, so I was able to successfully log in just by scanning the QR code on the screen.
Perfect, thank you, Kamla.
Okay, we'll just wait for 1 minute for everyone to
Yes.
join in, and I will be sharing the code on the screen.
Once you're able to join Mentimeter or access the platform, please confirm it on chat so we can move forward. Perfect. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Daniela. Amazing. We have a lot of people joining in.
Right.
Please stay until the end of the platform because we have a lot of engagement, a lot of questions that we need your insights on. Amazing. We'll give it 30 more seconds and then we'll move on.
Right. So just for everyone, I would also like to reiterate, I think this is a really lovely idea to have the interaction in this way with our participants. So for all the persons who just joined, can we just, leave it just for 10 more seconds, because we did have a few persons who just joined the room. We'd like you to just scan the QR code that's there, because our presenters, Brinda and Ajay, this morning, looking to get a level of interaction with today's session that I think is going to help create greater excitement for us. So once everyone is logged in, now, is anyone having any problems? Just let us know quickly.
Yes, please.
Right, so no one has any issues or challenges. Okay, great. So you could proceed now, Brinda.
Thank you, Kamla. Ajay, next slide, please. Take it away.
Thank you for the introductions, Kamla, and I hope everyone's logged into Menti. If you're not, don't worry, we have the QR code at every step when we're going to ask you the question. So even if you're joining late, you could just like scan the QR code then and there, and it'll take you to the question that we're on. We'll also be able to share the results with you later on, and you might be able to download them as well. So let's say it's going to be very interesting. Just to give an introduction about our organization, Kamla's already given an introduction about us. We're from Sustainext, and Sustainext started as a need, but not an idea, but as a need from sustainability consultants as well as organizations wanting to work on sustainability, where there are hundreds of frameworks, with the different geographies. There's so much data. The data is scattered across everywhere. So our purpose of why we were created is to simplify the whole thought process around sustainability and make it easier for companies, conglomerates, groups, small sizes to big sizes. Anyone, we want to help you become more sustainable and integrate sustainability within your business, a way to do business as well, like integrate it into the DNA, and actually solve the challenges that are facing all of us, not just in one part of the world, but everywhere. So that's something about us. Sustainext is basically a SaaS-based platform, and we'll be showing you some snippets of the platform, as part of this. We'll show you how data can be tracked and managed towards the end of our presentation. So that's something about Sustainext. You can always visit us on our website, which is sustainext.ai. Okay, and so we're already starting with the questions now. So I like to request you to go to your phones. Maybe I'll show the QR code for 10 more seconds in case anyone still hasn't joined, and we could start with the first question. Okay. So first question is really simple. We'd like to, understand our audience today a little bit better. We'd just like to know which industries you might be associated with. So just type in your answers and click on submit, and that's all you need to do.
Clearly, we have a very diverse audience here.
We do. This is very cool to see in real time. Thank
We'll
you for
just,
sharing, everyone.
yeah,
We
let's
might
just
give it,
wait 10 more
yeah,
seconds. Yeah.
yes.
Okay, that might be it.
All right. We can go to the next question.
Okay, so professional services leading the way. See, a lot of insurance, legal, education. So the way this works is the more number of responses, the bigger the word is. So, we see more people from that industry joining us today. It's very interesting to see such a diverse audience today. Okay, so on to the next question then. So now that you shared your organizations, if you could share, what your current role is at your current organization.
Okay, we'll give it 10 more seconds before moving ahead. Okay, thank you for sharing your roles and designations. That gives us a very good insight into the kind of audience we're addressing. And it's very on point for a corporate governance event. I think we will be speaking to a lot of decision makers, and this is a very important conversation that you're even attending about sustainability and balancing business decisions with sustainability. Thank you. I think
Absolutely,
we have
Brinda.
one last question for them.
Correct. Before we go to the next question, I see there's a lot of senior management. So yeah, again, the perfect audience for this session. As well as we have someone from the ESG space. So, it's good to have some support there as well. So we'll go to the third question, which is, just asking you, what do you know about sustainability? So there's that question for you. Please let us know, how much do you think you know? So this is a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 means that you don't have any knowledge about this, and 5 being like, you really know about this concept, and you probably worked with us before as well.
I'm hoping it's going to edge a little bit over the midpoint, right? So if anybody else has not uh, uh, filled out
We're here to help if it doesn't, and even if it does. So it's all good.
yeah.
Okay, I guess we'll wait for 15 more seconds. I think this question takes a bit longer to answer.
It does.
Yeah, and it is pretty subjective too in terms of how strongly people think that they know enough that they can rate themselves on it. It's because there's just so much information out there and rapidly evolving information too. So
Yeah, we completely resonate with you. I mean, there's almost like a new framework every quarter. So there is, yeah, as Lorenzo says, lots of opportunity for us to learn and engage with the subject matter, and that's a good thing. It is indeed a good thing.
Okay, so we've received about 27 responses. Kamala, could you please confirm if... Okay, I think there's a point raised by Lorenzo as well. Lorenzo says that the results so far indicate a significant opportunity for us to learn and engage more with the subject matter. Absolutely agree, Lorenzo. And what we're really doing here is, asking the audience themselves to do like a sustainability knowledge self-assessment. So, you yourself have rated everyone together at an average score of 2.9, which is still ahead of the midpoint, which is 2.5. So that's a good thing. But I see climate change, we've got 10 responses towards a score of 4, which I think is great because people are more aware of climate change, not so much about climate risk. So that's something. And I see we've gotten good responses. We've gotten 2 responses for circular economy with like strong knowledge as well. So Kamala, congratulations to you. I think you're doing a great job talking about circularity here. That said, thank you so much everyone for participating in the first set of questions. We'll have more for you. And so now, taking this as a base for understanding what we're going to be talking about, let's proceed. Right. So we'll start with the basics, right, before we dive into the details. So there is this old definition of sustainability, which says sustainability refers to the ability to meet our current needs without compromising the ability for our future generations to meet their needs. And why I say that's the old definition is because I don't think it's going to be working out for anyone anymore, right? This is not a problem for the future. This is a current generation problem. It's not the next generation that's going to face the effects of climate change. We've already started facing it. We've already seen the problems for pollution, especially with plastic in the oceans, with soil degradation, with degradation of biodiversity and habitats, as well as the way businesses can affect partners in the value chain and stakeholders beyond just the supply chain itself. So we say that that's a conservative approach, and we want to expand that approach and turn that into a regenerative approach, where sustainability is not something that you do for someone else, for another generation, for the future, for just as a social responsibility, but you do it for your own self, and it adds value to your own business as well, right? So I think we have enough data now to show that taking a sustainable approach will actually add more value to businesses and supply chains in the longer run. So taking that thought into consideration, let's just put another thought across. which is basically that, we're all part of this one planet, and let's call it nature. But within nature, we're human beings, and let's call that society. And what does society use to generate wealth or generate services, go about year on year or for century on century, is the economy. And within the economy, the subset of that is a business, right? And so when we apply the concept of sustainability to the small subset inside nature, that's when we come to the terms ESG, which is environment, social, and corporate governance. Let's not confuse the terms ESG and CSR, because social responsibility is an added responsibility apart from your own business and your supply chain or value chain, whereas ESG refers to something which is integral to the business itself. That being said, let's go deeper into ESG. Let's look at what corporate's sustainability journey looks like.
Thank you, Ajay. All right. So now that we have the broader context of what sustainability is and how ESG fits into that definition, here's what a typical corporate sustainability journey looks like. And if we had to distill it down to key points, it would begin with measurement. So what is measured is managed, is an old adage, and I think that's very accurate, whether that's in our own personal lives or in a corporate setting, and especially with sustainability. Quantifying impact where possible across ESG aspect areas is very important. So that is the first step. And the next step is to implementation, and that can look like implementing strategies, implementing policies, and implementing reduction initiatives, or impact management initiatives. The third step is to track this performance over time, to track performance against goals, against benchmarks. It's very important to track performance to identify areas for improvement. Then the final step is to communicate. And this is where I think a lot of pressure to report on ESG performance these days comes in, because there's a lot of demand for ESG data. There's investors demand it, consumers demand it, because they're becoming more and more eco-conscious every day. And a lot of suppliers are also being asked to share their ESG data with their consumers. So it is increasingly becoming a business consideration. And this is what a typical corporate sustainability journey looks like. Of course, there are several deeper aspects to each of these elements. And we will touch upon that a little later in the presentation. But as an overview, this is what a typical corporate sustainability journey looks like. Ajay?
Okay. So
Thank
Brinda
you.
did a great job about, telling about a typical corporate sustainability journey, and that was distilled into like 4 key parts. But then those parts, if you go deeper into them, they expand and become this like vast universe of things. And let us just take you through them. So within the sustainability or ESG universe, for corporates, it starts from your base frameworks. I see Kamla also mentioned the ISO 37000 for good corporate governance. So these base frameworks are the frameworks which help with, what data to collect, where to look for it, and how to process it into useful information for use later. And the use later looks like the reporting frameworks, which are these international frameworks regulated by several international bodies, which define what are the key metrics or indicators that need to be reported. So for example, the GRI framework or the Global Reporting Initiative focuses more on ESG metrics, whereas the Carbon Disclosure Project, the CDP, it started from climate, but it's now also focused on the impact on water and forests as well. And so these are reporting frameworks which basically take the data from the base frameworks, and then you're able to generate a report. It's basically a disclosure, and then using that disclosure, you can do multiple things later. For public companies, most geographies require this as a part of the regulation, that you must report these metrics. And so these international frameworks are a great way to be compliant with those regulations. But apart from that, these regulations can then, the data from these frameworks can then move on to other things that inform, say, strategy. So we move on to like risk-based frameworks, where the task force on climate-related financial disclosures comes into picture, where they talk about your strategy as well as your management of climate-related risks and opportunities. And once you've done all of this, and I'm going to tie this back to the corporate sustainability journey, there are also rating agencies at the end which are looking at ESG data and which are going to be providing a rating to you. Some examples are the Dow Jones Sustainability Index, there's the Sustainalytics Morningstar, as well as the MSCI ESG Index. So that's that, but then there's also regulations associated to sustainability, and then they change every day. So you have the International Sustainability Standards Board with the IFRS Foundation, as well as everyone's been hearing about the EU taxonomy, the CSRD, the SFDR. And all of these international bodies can come up with either regulatory requirements or a new way to report on sustainability or the standards. So they basically define the context of ESG or ESG reporting within sustainability.
Thank you, Ajay. Yeah, I think the ESG disclosure framework, if I just had to add on to Ajay's points, it's really heading towards standardization, and that's where companies really have to step up and not wait for regulation, because standardization is going to be implemented soon, and to the level of financial disclosures. So non-financial disclosures and financial disclosures will have to be taken seriously, and at the same breath. So I think it's important for companies to stay prepared and really understand the relevance and their own unique sustainability contexts. Yeah, thank you, Ajay, for that. All right. So we're moving on to what does governing for sustainability look like. So we think governance is a gear that actually furthers and brings momentum to both business and sustainability. So there cannot be business without governance, and there cannot be business without sustainability. That is the context we're living in today's world. And governance is what drives strategy, policy, and disclosure in everyday management of the business. And those are the key areas that governance will also be responsible for within sustainability. Next slide, please. All right. So if we think about why is it even important, we see that the stakes are super high. So by managing ESG and sustainability impact within the organization, we are able to mitigate risk, whether that's regulatory risk, reputational risk, or even climate risks, which can really help build resilience and business continuity. Then there is return. We've seen that businesses that are future ready are more profitable in the long term. They're able to maintain their reputation, they're able to be resilient, and they're able to retain their employees as well, which is their human capital. And that is very important as well, because again, it ties into reputation resilience, but most importantly, it ties back into return, because businesses cannot function without human capital. So that is the social element of the ESG parts. Next slide, please. All right, and this is what ESG disclosure for governance looks like. We wanted to give you an overview of what that is, because if we talk about environment, we know what those disclosures look like. There could be emissions data, there could be energy data, there could be waste, water, or biodiversity. When it comes to social metrics, there could be employee well-being, diversity, health and safety, training, those kind of aspects, or even community development and impact. But when it comes to governance, like, it's usually quite confusing for people, because what do I report when it comes to governance? So here are a few metrics that are taken from both CDP and GRI. So when it comes to governance disclosure, we're looking at disclosing aspects like board's knowledge and expertise about sustainability, how sustainability is managed within the organization, how are risks monitored and mitigated, what is the board structure and diversity and independence, and what does the strategy and implementation look like, and any incentive programs or remuneration related incentives that are linked to the achievement of ESG goals, and ethics, integrity, code of conduct, and how sustainability is integrated within those considerations, and of course the foundational elements like transparency, and how all of this data is being disclosed as well. So if we're looking at aspects like incentives for achieving ESG goals, if frameworks are already asking companies to disclose these elements at such a high level, it's important for companies to be prepared to even consider implementing these initiatives within their own company. So it's high time that companies take this seriously and engage with experts, or develop the board's collective knowledge and expertise to tackle these challenges as they come. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Brinda.
Yeah.
So, how do you tackle these challenges then? I think the first step is not to just rely on these external frameworks, but have an internal framework within your organization, right? So, and we're going to tie everything back to the theme, which is governing for future generations. There needs to be some sort of formal procedure or a structure within the organization itself, just even at a high level. And it is, if you don't have it, I think you should start at least at a high level of how this could look like. And that's step one. But what comes after that is actually taking formal ownership of this structure. Right. So it's basically trying to create a formal process or procedure to integrate sustainability within the governance structure, right? And this should be documented to maintain transparency and to showcase ownership, and even be compliant with all of these international frameworks, right? But once that is done, then the next step is taking broader ownership. So it should not be in silos. So the ownership should not be just limited to a single person or a single committee with a specific expertise. I think, having broader ownership can in turn help identify key business areas to reduce negative impacts and increase positive impacts, across business operations. And what that looks like basically is like shifting from a compliance approach to a strategic approach, where maintain transparency across your impact, and that will also help you identify not just key risks but also key opportunities and help your business in the longer run. So let's now talk about challenges faced by organizations and the individuals running these organizations. I think we have the exact audience for this today. So we're taking it back to you, audience. Please tell us about the challenges faced by you, and we want you to get back to your phones. And we're going to be showcasing the question on the screen. But before that, in case anyone has joined late, I'm going to be showing the QR code for another 10 more seconds. Okay, so I think that is the question. So where do you currently face challenge, related to sustainability within your organization? We'd like to know, I think you can give up to 4 responses. So do think about, okay, this is where I really face a challenge.
Very interesting insights. I'm quite surprised to see the implementation so low.
Somebody heard you and decided to include it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, we've received 22 responses. We'll wait about 30 more seconds before proceeding.
Yeah, we would love it if everyone from the audience participated in this, because we do want this to be exchanging of insights, and we will also bring you on stage later so you can share more of your experiences and insights of managing sustainability within your own organization. But in the meanwhile, until we get to the Q&A part, I think this is a really good way to interact.
I'm very happy to see that disclosure is not one of the major concerns and challenges that
Yeah, I was quite surprised by that, but it's really positive. Yeah.
Okay, I guess 10 more seconds, and then, let's already start discussing the results. So what this looks like from understanding till communication is, the typical sustainability journey of an organization. But like these points are now split up. So, right after you've done something nice about around sustainability with your organization, you might want to tell people about it as well. So communication is also one of the key steps, so that others can also take inspiration from you, and you can also take a leadership position when it comes to doing good for the world, for your organization, for people around you. What we do see here is a lack of understanding or a lack of expertise within the audience today. And I guess that would not affect disclosure that much, because the disclosure parts are like quite straightforward, but then we see that it does affect management and implementation. And I would like to know your thoughts in the chat about this. Do you think that there might be a lack of data, and that's why that disclosure is not a big problem, that your pre-disclosure And that's why you have, these parts before disclosure are rated higher? Or are you post-disclosure, that disclosure was never a problem? And, like now post-disclosure, the management and implementation is where you need the expertise.
Yeah, I agree with Derek's point in the chat. Derek,
Yes.
you want to unmute and share your position?
Sure. Yes, apologies if there's background noise, very rainy. Yes, so I think very good points, but I believe many organizations are very early or have not even contemplated incorporating ESG or broader sustainability or circular components or elements into their strategic plans. So I think once the first 3 or 4 are an issue, the others you have not even gotten to theirs yet. So it'll be interesting to, I guess, craft the data collection a little different and see where the organizations are on their journey, and then get into the details as to what is preventing them from getting to those next steps. Thank you.
Thank you, Derek.
Great point, Derek, and thank you for participating. I think your point might be very, very valid and correct, and that might be the case that we are looking at. So I think we have another question for all of you right after that. So, with whatever you've learned today, how confident are you about governing for future generations, right? With your current level of knowledge and exposure to sustainability, what do you feel?
Knowledge gap response seems to be the most popular. So I have a follow-up question for those that answered that it's somewhat, but there's a knowledge gap. We would love to know, what kind of knowledge gap are you facing? Is it conceptual or is it more strategic knowledge gap of how to implement the concept into business, or anything else?
Great question, Brinda. And, if you've already answered, we'd love to know in the chat, what kind of knowledge gap do you face?
Well, sometimes it may be a question of we don't know what we don't know. And so we know that this is a major area that's evolving in governance.
Yeah.
But for a lot of persons, they may not quite be ready to even articulate where exactly the knowledge gap is. They just still need a lot of exposure and a lot of learning. That's my interpretation of it.
Yeah, and that's completely valid, right? Like even us as consultants, we have to keep up every day with the really dynamic, evolving field that it is. I think this is that's completely understandable. It does, yeah.
So it's 11:29 now. I just wanted to get an idea from you guys how much longer the presentation and then when we'll see the app.
Sure, we can get through this in about 10 to 15 minutes and then see the app.
Okay.
Would that be all right?
Well, we do have a half-hour period, so yes, but let's proceed as fast as we can.
Got it. All right. So Ajay, we can move forward.
Thank you, Brinda. Thanks, Kamala, for the update. Yeah, I think we'll be moving on with the presentation then. You can keep adding your responses. You'll be getting the results at the end, even with other people adding additional responses.
All
Over
right.
to you, Brinda.
Thank you. So when it comes to managing sustainability for a conglomerate, I think these are the main challenges that we've kind of identified from our experience in consulting with a few of these conglomerates. And they're varied, right? There's strategy, there's data related challenges, there is regional challenges, sector specific challenges, regulation and risk. And it's important to consider all of these when making decisions about governing for sustainability. So within strategy, the strategy has to be very dynamic to be applicable to different conglomerates, different groups within the conglomerate. And implementation can be a challenge, and tracking how everyone's performing can be a challenge. Data, of course, that can be scattered. That's the nature of ESG data. It's quite scattered. Almost every department in a company is involved. It's complex, and comparability is usually a challenge given the fact that it's all quantitative and qualitative data. There are regional considerations, there are different markets and varied risks. According to the different regions, there are different stakeholder groups that are interested because of the different regions. And there are sector-specific aspects as well. So there's materiality. So which topics are relevant and important for an organization really change according to the sector. There are sector-specific disclosure requirements and own sustainability challenges. There's regulation and there's compliance requirements that keep changing. There are different disclosure requirements, and there is the dynamic situation within the regulatory framework, regulatory space as well, which keeps evolving. And when it comes to risk, we look at physical risk, transition risks, and or even market risks, and how do you manage all of these risks. I think these are all the considerations that those on the board of conglomerates will really have to consider. So if we had to distill all of these down into 3 key points, governing for a conglomerate really comes down to strategy, management, and having visibility of ESG data. Next slide, please, Ajay. Thank you. So now that we know these challenges, here are how we can manage the challenges, right? So first is business management is, sustainability management can be very similar to business management. So we can rely on already established frameworks and structures and principles that the organization is familiar with and try to integrate sustainability into that. So that can look like applying principles of financial accounting, like completeness, accuracy, and data security even, and focus on core principles of sustainability where you find a balance between resource consumption and value generation. And you use the current management structure to implement sustainability strategy. The second one is materiality assessment. That's a key part of any sustainability strategy and not just reporting. It is to understand the organization's impact on ESG aspects and to refine your focus areas. Next is a position statement. I think this is very relevant in the context of a conglomerate. A position statement is really defining in one statement the what, how, why, and by when statement specifically tailored to sustainability for the entire conglomerate. So what is the conglomerate sustainability agenda? What are its material aspects? What are its key focus areas? And what kind of targets does it want to achieve and by when? And this having this statement distributed across the groups will really serve as an anchor for implementing sustainability throughout multiple organizations and at multiple organizational levels. And it'll really influence a culture of sustainability within the organization. So these are some of the key points. We have more solutions, which we will see in the next slide. So another way to effectively manage for sustainability is to look at setting targets and goals. This is where we define key performance indicators for the material aspects we identified previously and set targets for these ESG aspects. And these targets can be set for the short, medium, and long terms, and you can ensure alignment with larger business goals as well. The next step is to look at strategy and policy. Once you've identified the goals, we can really think about how to approach those goals or how to achieve those goals. And that is really the strategy. And we can lean on policies to really define the nitty-gritties and really guide the implementation of the strategy. Then the risks and opportunities. It's important to understand the exposure to ESG risk, especially climate risk, with both within the value chain and beyond, and into your supply chains as well. And it's important to identify, assess, monitor, and mitigate risks regularly. And this is something we don't see happening at every organization just yet. A few organizations are catching on and they do this assessment regularly, but there is significant opportunity for organizations to really incorporate a risk assessment in terms of ESG. And of course, the other side of risk is opportunity. That's where we leverage, identify and leverage opportunities. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. So data is a huge element when it comes to governing and especially taking database decisions. So managing data centrally becomes very important, especially in the context of a conglomerate. Collating data in a centralized platform will aid visibility, so decisions can be taken based on those aspects. Then tracking performance regularly, we discussed this earlier. So tracking performance against the already set targets will really inform not only the performance against the targets, but also it'll give you insight on how effectively your strategy is working. Then the internal ESG structure. So ESG landscape, we saw earlier that there are so many frameworks. There might be even more frameworks and standardization coming your way. But if you really look at the value of sustainability and incorporating that into the organization's operations, developing an internal ESG management and reporting structure becomes very valuable. This is where you can identify how you can leverage business opportunities, even reinvent and reimagine business models within the organization. So delegating ESG responsibility to every level of an organization is also part of that internal structure, and that can really help trickle ESG down to every level of organization and get everyone involved into it. Then the final one is decision making. I think this is very relevant as members of the board. It's important to integrate ESG considerations into everyday decisions as much as possible. And of course, it's great to, kind of integrate this point with the data related point. So making data-based decisions every day as much as possible, and making those decisions that impact the triple bottom line positively. I think those were the key solutions that we had. I am kind of breezing through a few of these points, so we'll be happy to answer any questions you might have on this towards the end. If you could go to the next slide, please, Ajay.
Thank you, Brinda. Right, and as as Kamla said, you guys really want to look at the platform, so we're also eager to show it to you. We have compiled all of this information. So Kamla, is there some way we can share this through an ebook or a portal Later on, we'll be happy to discuss and put it all together and share it with the audience today as well. I think it will be quite helpful. So let's look at, like, what's the role of data. I think Brinda has already spoken about a lot of it. The first step is to manage that data. Here's a small infographic, very condensed one about what sustainability or ESG data looks like. And we've looked at it before, right? So the environmental, social, and governance data across different, say, it's structured across different departments. And so here I give you just a small glimpse of, okay, what it could look like within your organization and why there has to be broader ownership around sustainability or ESG at the board level itself. Right, because it's different types of data. Some data is related to people and personnel. Some data is just related to, like, your consumption and your practices. Some data is, really related to your procurement. Like, what are you purchasing? And that really depends on a strategic business decision, right? And if your board chooses to create one particular business vertical, or start with another SKU, then the procurement can really affect your triple bottom line in terms of sustainability. And that's why the broader ownership should be there, and the communication and visibility, as Brinda mentioned earlier. It's very important to have visibility of where the impact is coming from. So we talked about this, but let's go into some specifics, and then we go to the platform. But what does this data look like for governing bodies, right? So I've just left a statement here which says sustainability starts at the top, the crucial role of governance. So we'll just give you a couple of examples. So the first one being from a GRI, and this is disclosure 2-12 from the latest GRI standards. And here you can see it's important for the highest governing body to identify and manage the impacts of the organization on 3 key things, which is economy, environment, and people, right? So GRI is asking this, and it says it needs this from the highest governing body to do this, to identify and manage these impacts, right? So then there's a requirement itself. If you're going to be using the GRI standards for disclosure, it needs to be a part of your governance, right? But then we move on. And so here we can see that not only does the highest governing body need to identify and manage the impacts of the organization, but it also needs to have a process to evaluate its own performance on this management, right? So then it goes broader. It's one level higher, right? So first you identify the impact, but okay, you're identifying, but what are you doing? What have you done in the past year? So this is this, and then we go even further, right? Then so the previous one was, say, impact and then performance on that impact, but now we're going like slowly into strategy. So it asks about a statement on sustainable development strategy. So we see the importance shifting from data and performance to something which is like bigger and more overarching. So that is strategy. So that's GRI, but there's another example from the TCFD framework, where we see that strategy goes even deeper. Once you have a strategy, then they ask for the board oversight related to climate related risks and opportunities. So we see that it goes deeper and deeper at each level, and the highest governing body needs to be involved with all of this, right? And so once you have this, and we were speaking about data, this is just like a small snapshot of where and how the data can be used. So the main places are, the reporting frameworks, as we discussed earlier, and your stakeholders. The stakeholders can look like, consumers, they can look like regulators, they can look like your investors as well. So investor disclosure in terms of ESG, as we've been seeing in our experience, has been becoming, more and more in depth, and there's like so much due diligence that happens on it. And so that's why we also say that transparency is a key thing. And then it's your rating agencies. But then there's 2 types of rating agencies. So you first have your index linked benchmarks. So, that could look like your S&P Global, the Dow Jones Index, you could have your non-index linked rating agencies or benchmarks, which could look like EcoVadis, which looks like, you as a supplier, or you can ask questions as a consumer organization from your suppliers, right? And then you have your ESG risk-based ratings. So then they talk about, okay, how much, looking at your ESG performance, is your business at risk? So that's where data becomes really, really important for an organization.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, sorry to interrupt you, but I think the main part that we probably haven't added here, but we touched upon earlier in the presentation, is that data can be used within the organization to make decisions. I think that's the key part of it. These are all more external oriented, usage of ESG data. But I think internally there is a lot of opportunity for especially decision makers to look at ESG data, familiarize themselves with it, and then really use that to drive strategy and even improve performance, which will take us to the next section of a slide.
Okay, so where do we start with improving performance? And I know, Kamla, we're going to keep this short, but we need the audience to tell us, what do you think you require to improve on your organization's sustainability performance? And I'll go back to the question slide so that we can see the results over here. I see a great answer. It's called commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll keep this short, just another 15 seconds before we move on, but I see we're getting a lot of answers right now.
Yeah.
And I think these are very valuable answers. Again, we see board and executive will.
I see money, which is very honest and very true.
Okay, 5 more seconds. I hope we get more responses. So, even if we move on, please keep adding your responses. So key takeaways from this are basically commitment, data, and knowledge, which I think are great places to start. So you have the knowledge, you commit to it, get the data, and that's a good place to start. Right. Okay, so we do have a few tips for you on how you can do this, how you can improve on your sustainability performance. We do say you start from the low-hanging fruit, but of course you don't stop there. You optimize the rest of your performance, and it takes a bigger exercise to do that. But for that, you need a centralized ESG data management platform, or like an environmental management system. I mean, it's a smaller subset, but we say, go for the full ESG. And then before you take any decision, do consider the price of the carbon that you're emitting, or the cost that you will incur to neutralize any 1 ton of carbon dioxide equivalent emission, or in terms of, say, what does your
sorry to interrupt you. I think we have less than 10 minutes, so we'll just move on to the
absolutely,
demo.
Brinda.
Yeah.
So this is just tying up to our platform, right? And so, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and so we have Sustainext as a platform, and we like to show you some like a few snippets from the platform. Here's our base framework, which just says collect, analyze, report, optimize, and track. And that's what we use to enable organizations to look at their data in a better way. So basically maintain visibility. Now, let me take you through the Sustainext platform. Um, Welcome to the platform. When you come to Sustainext, we spoke about a lot of different sorts of frameworks. We spoke about the sustainability landscape. We spoke about like the base frameworks themselves. And here you can, select all of what you're really using and you're going to be reporting to. So if you go to your preferences, you can select your sustainable development goals. So I select a couple more, right? And I can select my frameworks, as well as, what sort of certifications I'm going to be a part of, right? And then I can just look at them right on the dashboard here itself. And we're going to be, further working with these frameworks to get, the data to flow from your system, which is from your in-house, either ERP systems, it could be physical, documents from there till what the framework disclosures require. We're going to be working with these framework setting organizations as well. In the future, that's what's in store for you. But what we have for you already is number one, a way to create a structure across organizations, as well as, create multiple organizations across multiple locations and track all of that data in one place. So for a conglomerate, this really makes sense. You see, we have like, multiple locations over here across multiple countries, and this really ties it up where you can use all of these organizations. You can create, add your own data. We're stress testing the system right now. So you see a lot of data over here. But what we really want to showcase is that, within each, within a conglomerate, you can create multiple organizations. And within organizations, you can create like, multiple entities. Each entity can have multiple locations. And, you can map them to different areas on the planet. And so this ties into the visibility part of things where, you can have all of that data just come to, one place. I'd actually like to showcase how you can track that data. And then we'll go on to some cool features later. So let's look at, a dashboard view of what one company's data might look like. And here you can see we can track data across like, different time horizons as well, because we understand in different geographies, companies might have different like reporting periods depending upon the financial year over there. And you can track all your scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 data like right in one go across your different organizations. But let's look at, a deeper view across 2 organizations and what their data looks like. So here we're looking at an emissions dashboard, and we can look at, I've selected 2 organizations here, what the total emissions are going to look like, what the scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions look like across the different corporate entities within those 2 organizations. And, we can choose to see, okay, I just want to see my scope 2 and scope 3. So I can see that view, and, I can see, okay, which organization really is the biggest emitter. I see Wiley Coyote Corp here. It emits the most amount of carbon emissions. So I got to look at that, right? Not just that, but I can look at it across the different categories of which part of my business is actually doing the emissions. So you see over here, I see mostly it is this brown category, and it says stationary combustion, which is like burning fossil fuel within my own factories, which is generating these emissions. But the other bar that I see is this light blue bar, and I can see that's purchased goods and services. And here I get that example where I said, your business decisions can affect your triple bottom line. So here, your procurement decisions are affecting your emissions at the end. So if you're not going for sustainable procurement practices, it's going to affect your emissions. But what if I want to see a more detailed view, right? And let's just select one organization across. So let me just select Orion Group as an example. So just for Orion Group, I don't care about anything else right now. I can see the total emissions. I can track the scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3 emissions, as well as my emissions over time. I can track my emissions over the different categories like earlier. I can expand a view and see, okay, what my emissions are. And here I see for Orion Group, purchase goods and services is the highest source of emissions. Mobile combustion really doesn't make sense because as a business, I don't really burn a lot of fossil fuel, but my purchase goods and services is adding to most of my emissions over here. So, it really gives a bird's eye view of, okay, what does my whole group look like versus, what does my individual corporate entity or locations emission look like? And here we can see, we can track the emissions visually, on a map. The radius of the circle represents, how much emissions are coming from which location. So if you're a big conglomerate spread across the globe, then you'll be able to track your emissions in one dashboard. And we're able to build these dashboards now using, any BI tool of your preference. So, but then that can then be integrated within the Sustainext platform itself. So you don't really have to move from what you're comfortable with. You don't have to change. We do that integration for you. And here you can see across locations. You have 3 locations. We see Reykjavik has the least amount of emissions. That being in Iceland, it's kind of representative of that country. But for the other locations, the emissions are much higher. I can see business travel are the highest emission sources for like all 3 locations. So I got to look at my C-suite and ask them to travel less if it's not required and join in virtual meetings like today. As well as, looking at it month by month, I can select my offices. Let me see, I just want to see Morocco and what the emissions are, month by month. And if I just don't, want to see it at a group level, I can just select one specific location of operation. Let's just select the Acme factory in Austin, right? And see what those emissions look like. And so I get like a detailed view for that particular location or business unit. And you can just, go to the actual map level of where it's located. So you can do it at a city level, at a business unit level, and depending upon how you structure your business. So visibility is the main thing that we're looking at over here. And, just for that office.
Sorry, Ajay, I think I was about to ask this as well. I was wondering, I know we're still testing this right now, so I'm not sure if some of these are functional, but can we go to the optimize section and show them a little bit of the reality as well quickly? I think we have a few minutes, so.
Okay. So let me take you through another section. And we call it the net zero roadmap section. It's optimizing your emissions or your performance that we spoke about earlier. And let me show you a couple of scenarios that we've created earlier. So what this tool does is basically you can add the details about your emissions, about your business plan, about what your business is going to look like in the future. How is your business going to change in terms of, say, production volume, in terms of increase in number of employees, in terms of increase in area, and then you can actually create scenarios and forecast your emissions looking at the future. And so we can see for the same starting point, we created 3 different scenarios and how those emissions look different. And you can look at it across different categories. Let's see, what my emissions from, let's say, just electricity look like for these organizations. I can look at that versus what they look like from just like public transport. And we see like, different scenarios are going to give you different outputs. But what the cool part about it is now we can actually set like a net zero line. So this assumes that, you know, you're setting a net zero target by the year 2029. And, you know, what do you need to do to get there? So you also get some sort of gap analysis data. Is, you know, are you above or below your target? If you're below, that's fine. But if you're above, then by how much? So that how much do you need to reduce or need to target in terms of emission reductions? And if we get into this deeper, we can look at it, you know, let's just say, what does my air travel look like, right? And in terms of my net zero line and what the gaps are over there, and how much am I overshooting just due to my air travel emissions, and how much do I need to reduce?
And if I could just add, I think our platform also comes with consulting hours built into the subscription. So once you've identified the gap, you can actually work with our consultants who will develop a custom roadmap for you to reduce your emissions as well. I think we're good on time, but if I can just take about 10 seconds to just highlight a few of the additional features that we didn't get to didn't get to show because of the lack of time. That would be, we want to simplify sustainability, and we're working with robotic process automation to kind of read all your bills, which can be uploaded directly to the platform. So there won't be any time spent on data entry. So data can be automatically read from these receipts and be input into the platform, and the analysis will happen automatically. So that's why we're leveraging technology to really make sustainability simple. And I think we're happy to schedule a detailed demo for anyone interested. And this was a great discussion. We really didn't realize how time flew by. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for interacting. We really hope to work with you guys to further sustainability.